Hey everyone, welcome back to the iGaming experience. I'm Sam Bhatti, recording in the Zebra Studios here in beautiful Podgorica, Montenegro, as I do every episode. And today we're talking about something every single person in this industry deals with, but almost nobody gets trained on properly. Talking about meetings. That's right. If you're new to iGaming, meetings can feel chaotic. You'll hear acronyms you've never heard before. You'll be wondering why we have 4 CRM managers in the same meeting. And half the time, you'll sit there thinking, why am I even in this meeting, especially when you're new? So today, I'm breaking it all down, right? How to get the most out of meetings, how to contribute, how to sound confident without pretending that you know everything, and how to leave every meeting feeling like your time mattered. So let's start with the reality. iGaming meetings are not really like meetings in a lot of other industries. And here's why. Firstly, everything or almost everything is cross-functional. Product, marketing, compliance, payments, risk, development, design, they all overlap. So your meeting probably has way more departments than you might have expected. Number two, the industry moves extremely quickly. A lot of meetings are reactionary, right? There might be a market regulation change or a provider updates a release that you need to pay attention to. There's a new KYC rule. There's a new bug that popped up in the sports book or the casino. And suddenly everyone or half the team is on a call, right? Thirdly, here, people come from different backgrounds, right? Some people are from completely outside the industry, like many of you listening. Some come from casinos, right? Sometimes land-based, sometimes online. Some come from just straight up technology development, like myself, from other industries. Some come from a sports interest or a sports career background. Some are marketing and advertising experts or have experience in that field. Some are coming from finance. And even though we're all part of the same industry, each one of these departments has their own way of speaking, and really everyone speaks a slightly different language when coming to these meetings and having these cross departmental conversations. So just bear that in mind. And another one, which I think is an important point here, especially when you're new and at opposite ends of the org chart, either at the top or near the bottom or whatnot, is that hierarchy is weird. Right? You'll have junior people who know a lot, and you'll have senior people who also know a lot, but maybe not about that specific area. So you might find yourself, yes, you yourself with years of experience, let's say, learning from someone who joined 6 months ago. So for the newbies here, you might be teaching one of your colleagues shortly after you started, which maybe comes as a surprise to both of you. But in my experience, I've come to expect it. People are interesting. People have stories. And usually when people land in iGaming, there's an interesting path to how they got there. And in most cases, they're bringing something to the table. So just be open to it, right? Regardless of where you are on the org chart. Okay. So all that to say, if you've ever felt confused in a meeting, don't worry. That's iGaming, right? Welcome to the club is all I can really say to that. All right. So most people think meetings start when you walk in the room, right? Or when you join the call. That is wrong. Meetings actually start way before the meeting, right? And here's what you should do as a newcomer to be ready for that. Number one, check the meeting title and description. I know this might seem obvious, but you can get a lot of information if the organizer has added a description or taken some time to make a descriptive title. So that'll give you a big clue about what's going to be going down at this meeting. If it's vague, which happens a lot, just ask yourself this question. What's the outcome we want from this meeting, right? You might not know the answer, but just try to think about it. Note that down, or at least, think it through. In most cases, it'll just take you a few seconds. Like I said, the title or description can do a lot of this work for you, but it's just important that you also take some time to think about it yourself, and take a note of whether you were right or wrong when you got to that meeting. Was that the outcome that was that people wanted to discuss? Right. Second most important thing here is scan the participants. Right, see who's attending. This tells you the subject and possibly how technical the meeting may get. Right, if a compliance person is there, it's probably about risk and regulation. Right, if design is there, maybe we're talking, visual or UX. If the developers are there, then maybe we're talking implementation or bug fixing. Number 3, read any docs that are attached. This is massive, right? If someone has organized a meeting and taken the time to fill out an agenda or attach a separate document to give additional context, check it out, right? Even if you don't have time, even if you just skim, it gives you enough context to at least enter the conversation with something to contribute, right? And on that note, prepare at least one thing to ask or contribute. One thing. It doesn't have to be deep. It could be just asking, hey, who is the target user for this? Or what's the timeline? Or, what's our number one success metric? One good question makes you look prepared and engaged. In fact, not just look, you are, right? You've actively taken the time to think about this, and you're trying to bring some value to the table. All right. Now you're in the meeting, right? Your camera's on, your mic's muted, everyone's talking. How do you actually contribute? Well, you might like this one, especially if you're a little bit nervous, but start by listening, not talking, right? Which is something I struggle with, again, as, someone who has a podcast that likes to listen to his own voice. Yes, I listen to these afterwards. Really purposefully do some listening, right? Good contributors don't jump in immediately in most cases, unless there's very good reason. They listen for the shape of the conversation first, and then, they're going to jump in when they'll make the biggest impact, if there's even that opportunity. Second here is looking for clarity gaps. Okay, most iGaming meetings suffer from one thing, which is actually the theme of the everything I've said before this. Most iGaming meetings suffer from assumptions. Okay, if something sounds unclear, you asking a question about that, here's a little secret. It usually helps everyone. Okay, I can't stress this enough. Even if everyone already knows the answer and just you don't, the entire group benefits from the added clarity. Just hearing someone say it. Confirmation, communication. This is important. Right. Thirdly, related to questions is asking framework questions. Right. So instead of asking for tiny details, ask for questions that will move the discussion forward. Right. Like, okay, what problem are we solving? Who owns the next step? What's blocking us? Right. These are simple questions, but these are powerful questions. All right. Now, a fourth one, I think we all know this as well, but it just takes that little bit of extra effort, is taking visible notes, right? Not just taking notes, not sitting there typing silently. I'm talking about with a pen and paper, right? So just on optics, just completely superficially, people will see you doing it. They will take you more seriously, okay, when they see you writing things down. And not superficially, for real, you and your colleagues are going to get a ton of value from those notes. In fact, I think in the future, I'll just do a full episode that focuses on note taking and building your own resource library. I touched on it in the previous episode when I talked about building your own glossary, but there's a whole set of resources that you can build yourself, and they can become a very valuable resource for yourself and for others. In fact, you know what? I'm going to take a note on that right now. Number 5, don't pretend you know something that you don't. Might seem like the right thing to do at the time, but that is a trap that you're putting yourself in. Okay. iGaming is way too big. You will get caught and you're going to look dumb. Nobody wants that. The opposite of what you're trying to do here. So listen to the previous episode on imposter syndrome for more context, right? Instead of pretending, just say something along the lines of, hey, just to make sure I understand correctly, and then repeat your understanding. This is actually one of the best ways to contribute without faking expertise, right? Again, others in the room will benefit from hearing it, even if they already think they know what's up. Don't be afraid to ask. Number 6 on this list is focus on one impactful contribution, right? So I kind of touched on this earlier, but it's worth reiterating. You don't need to talk a lot. You just need to add one thoughtful thing. And I shouldn't even say need, it's just beneficial if you can do so, right? You don't have to shoehorn one thing in every meeting just because you were there, right? But if you got something beneficial, think about it beforehand and wait for your moment and then drop it in there, right? That could be a question. It could be a clarification. It could be a recommendation, right? But it's, as I said, it's helpful to consider these things before the meeting. And very importantly, be open to adjusting it, based on things you learn in the meeting, right? If there's some new information that comes across, in fact, it'll be even more impressive if you're able to come out with something that seems quite considered based off of information that everyone's just learned. So, preparation, right? Number 7 here is, and this is super underrated, but watch how senior people communicate, right? If you're lucky, right, in every meeting, or at least in every company, there is someone that is very good at steering conversations. Study them. I'm being serious. Study them, right? How do they simplify things? How do they disagree politely with their colleagues? How do they ask for clarity? Right? This is free education, right? If you see someone that you find interesting, that you feel contributes to meetings, then look at them closely. Have a little bit of a study, maybe even ask them a question or two about how they achieve this skill. So most people, they're going to leave a meeting, they're going to forget everything. For real. This happens all the time. And it's a big mistake. Real execution happens after the meeting, right? And this is something I've said for years. The meeting itself is not the work. It's the plan to do the work, right? Some days are filled with meetings, and I understand that, I'm not going to sit here and say you didn't do any work because you just attended 6 meetings. But if you just attended 6 meetings and then there's no actions to take afterwards, then, what did you really do? So here's your playbook. Let's make things as impactful and as efficient as possible. So number 1 in your playbook, review your notes immediately. Like immediately, as soon as the meeting ends, take a look at them. This should just take you a couple of minutes, right? Clean them up, make sure they're usable for you now and in the future, right? Future you will thank yourself. So, and in fact, I should do a whole other episode on how you can do good things for future you. But for now, let's leave it with meeting notes, right? Second, very effective tip post meeting is identify your next steps, right? Your next steps, not everyone else's. Okay. And you shouldn't need permission, right? If you see something that you can take on that fits within your remit, take it. Be proactive, solve problems. And you know what? Sometimes if it's out of your remit, go a little bit above and beyond. That's also okay. Know your boundaries, but I certainly am not disappointed when I have people on my team that decide to step up and maybe do things a little bit outside of their role to help the overall team succeed. So consider it in that vein. Number 3 here is send a simple summary if needed. Not to everyone, and not every meeting needs this, but if the meeting was a little bit messy, you're going to get a lot of love from certain team members if you're able to share some of your insights or what you gathered from it. Okay, so when you're sharing this summary, a good summary has 3 key parts, right? This is pretty obvious, but worth saying. What decisions were made, what action items came from the meeting, and who owns what, right? Who's actually supposed to do these things. This seems obvious, but really is so beneficial to just have this stuff written down and said out loud. Okay. Now, also worth noting that most meetings I'm in, at least, there's at least one AI note taker from someone. I use one myself, and that is great as a backup. Right? This is not your only note taker, and it's there to help you to add to your own notes, but you do not fully rely on AI to get everything out of the meeting and tell you what happened and what the action points are. Okay. It's great if it does that for you, but when it does, that info just lives on the screen, right? It needs to be in your brain, not just on the screen. So if you incorporate that into your notes, that's just going to naturally happen, right? And now the big thing here as well, this is a huge one, is follow up on anything that's unclear. Okay. If something has been stipulated in a meeting and you're not sure about it, some other people might be, and they might be expecting some actions to happen. So go ahead and inquire, right? It shows responsibility, not weakness, or that you don't know what you're doing, right? And in fact, before you check for clarity, check your notes. They'll be a big help here. And, if they don't answer the question for you, it should help you shape your questions to get clarity. Okay. If you want to build a reputation fast in this industry, that's part of the blueprint. Here's a couple of more key tips. And this is what it's going to, it's not even tip. This is kind of a culmination of some of the advice that I've given in the first half of this podcast. So just be the most prepared person in the room, right? Or at least strive to be. You're going to ask questions that bring clarity, right? You're going to take ownership wherever you can, right? This is a massive part of leveling up, is taking ownership where you can, not just where you have to. And a tough one here, at least a tough one for me, is understand when to speak and when to stay silent. Right? You don't have to say anything at every single meeting. You really don't. Sometimes it's good enough to just be there and take it in, and the contributions that you have will be apparent after them. All right. And just be consistent, right? That's the big one. If people get used to a certain reliability from you and performance within these meetings, keep it up. You don't want to be lapsing on that. You worked hard to gain that reputation. So if you do this consistently, right, this is what happened to me, is you might find yourself invited into meetings that you didn't expect to be invited into. And that's a good thing, right? My grandfather once told me, and I love this, I've told a million people this, because I used to dress quite flamboyantly. I used to peacock quite a bit. Because my grandfather told me, dress for the rooms you want to be invited into, right? Look the part, back it up with preparation and the confidence that being ready brings, right? And that may seem like old-fashioned advice in some ways, but it translates if you think about the principle of it. So when I say dress for the room that you want to be in, I'm not just talking about the clothes. I'm talking about present yourself in a way where you belong there alongside whoever it is that you're hoping to be in a meeting with. All right. So That's it. There you have it. Right. That's my advice for meetings. How to get the most out of meetings in iGaming, how to contribute, how to build confidence, even if you're brand new. Meetings don't need to be exhausting. They can actually be your fastest route to learning and to connecting you with your team and for you to be able to show a ton of value. So lock in on those meetings, appreciate them, right? Sometimes they can feel like a bit of a slog, but they won't if you're coming prepared and you've got the outcomes of the purpose of the meeting, really. But if you got your personal outcomes, your department outcome, and the company outcomes at the forefront of your mind when you're going into these meetings, they're going to be a lot more entertaining for you. They really are. You're going to find that in some cases, maybe that boring weekly meeting, well, it's not so boring anymore, and you're actually really looking forward to it. All right. Thanks for listening to the iGaming Experience. I'm Sam Bhatti. As usual, I will see you in the next episode. Please feel free to share this episode with someone that's new in iGaming and maybe is a little bit nervous, or even someone in another industry that might just benefit from some extra skills in their meetings. And lastly, I'd just like to really give a shout out to you for being here, finding this podcast, and now listening all the way to the end of this episode. I do not promote this podcast at all, right? And I mean, the main reason for that really is because I don't want to walk people to this. I want the curious to find it. And also it's a lot less work for me to not have to market it. So that helps. But really, really, the people that come and find this on their own, I'm so impressed with. And if you've listened all the way to the end, major props to you. Send me a message and I'll get back to you. I got some love from my people that are this curious and going all the way in. So once again, I'm Sam Bhatti. If anyone wants to reach out to me, you can get me at sam@zebrasolutions.me. Links in the show notes, all that type of stuff. Right on. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.